Thank you for listening to this episode of the Feldencast. I'm your host, Ethan Cowan. Hello, welcome. This is the Feldencast, episode 18, Turning the Hands, Rounding the Back. One of the things that I want to do with the Feldencast is go through all 550 of the AY lessons of Moshe Feldenkrais. And, it's partly like a personal, inquiry. But it's also because I'm trying to understand more about his compositional approach to making movement lessons. Now, it raises the question, what is a movement lesson? And what makes a Feldenkrais lesson a lesson, something that teaches you something, a structure in which you learn something interesting. And that is, compared to like a movement exploration or, an exercise. So in the last episode, episode 17, I presented something a little shorter and something that I made up. And it was fun. It was really exciting to me that I came up with like an idea that was related to some of the stuff we've been working on, the AY lessons. And I turned it into a lesson, I think. A little side note, I sent that lesson to a Feldenkrais trainer that I know, sort of, to get some feedback about it, and I haven't heard back from him yet, so I guess the jury's still out on whether, I think it's a lesson. I'm going to say it counts. But I guess I really enjoyed that process, and so this episode is another one that I made up. It's another attempt on my part to, participate in this history of making movement lessons. So episode 19 will be back to the AY lessons, but for now, hope you enjoy this one. It's called Turning the Hands, Rounding the Back. Please start by coming to a standing position. So you stand with both feet on the floor and give yourself a slow once over. Just feel how you're standing. Bring your attention to how the two heels are touching the floor and then how the 2 feet are touching the floor. How's the weight distributed between the heels and the fronts of the feet? And then what about, are you standing more on the right leg or the left leg? What does it feel like in your lower back when you stand? What about the breathing? And the feeling of your chest? And the upper back and the shoulder blades? And the feeling of your neck? And the head carried on top of the neck? Okay, good. Now just walk around for a few steps. Just to move a little bit naturally. And then walk to your spot on the floor and lie down, lie on your back. And now, right away, while you're lying on your back, just notice, is there any Are there any hints from your breathing that now you can relax a little bit more? Is your horizontal breathing any different than your vertical breathing was? And then bring your attention down to your heels where the two heels are making contact. And feel the 2 feet pointing in 2 different angles, 2 different directions. And then you feel how the pelvis rests on the floor, and therefore how the lower back feels to you now horizontal. And then the picture you have of your chest, so the front of the chest, the back of the chest on the floor. And the upper back, the shoulder blades. Shape of your neck. And the head connected to the end of the neck. Okay, now please roll onto one of your sides. And then use both of your arms, the hands on the floor, to help you come up to a sitting position. And then sit on the floor so that both of the feet, the soles of the feet, are touching one another. So that means that the knees are coming out to the sides, and the outsides of both legs are kind of facing the floor. The knees will be more or less close to the floor. They don't have to be close to the floor. They could be less close to the floor, as long as the soles of the feet are touching. And now bring your right hand and place it on the floor somewhere in front of your pelvis, in this frame, this shape that's created by the 2 legs. Then you put your left hand to the left of your left thigh, somewhere on the floor right there. Okay, now make a movement of turning your right hand over so the back of the hand touches the floor, and then turning it back over so the palm of the hand touches the floor. A few times, a nice innocuous movement. You just turn the right hand over one way and then you turn it back over the other way. And make it a small enough, quiet enough movement so you can hear or feel what else goes on. There's barely anything as you turn the hand over, but you might feel, what does that do in the neck? What does that do in the back? Okay, now just put the palm of the right hand on the floor. And now start to, first feel that there's like a shape that's created by the left leg. There's a space underneath the left knee, between the left knee and the floor. So now with the right palm on the floor, just slide the right hand so that it could go underneath the left knee. And then slide it back to where it starts. And a few times, you just slide the palm on the floor, the right palm, into the gap underneath the left knee, or in that direction. And every time you do it, you come back to where the palm starts. If you want to, you could move with the breath somehow, or you could forget about the breathing. Okay, now come back to the starting position and turn the hand over so it's the back of the hand, the back of the right hand that's on the floor. And now continue to slide the hand, now the back of the hand, on the floor underneath the left leg, or in that direction, doesn't matter if it goes under. And I'm hoping that you feel that there's some difference when the arm is turned like this compared to when it's the palm on the floor. So try to feel that. If you want to, you could go back and forth. So you try it once with the back of the hand on the floor, going under the left leg, and once with the palm on the floor. You could compare and contrast. Which one of those feels easier to you? Does the hand slide more easily under the left leg with the palm on the floor or with the back of the hand on the floor? Okay, now come to some resting position for a moment. So you sit comfortably. And then again, bring the two soles of the feet together. And put the right hand on the floor in the frame that's made by the legs, that shape. And then the left hand on the floor to the left of the left thigh, or to the left of the pelvis, somewhere on the floor there. And now do a movement with the left hand. So you turn the left hand over, so that at one point the palm of the left hand's on the floor, and then you flip it over so the back of the hand is on the floor. And you just go back and forth slowly and quietly. Hopefully it's a small movement, but one where you could hear that there are other parts of you that move because you're turning the hand over. So I'm suggesting you could listen for when you turn the hand over, does it change anything in your back? Or can you do it softly enough so that you allow it to change something in your back, change your neck, your head? Okay, now leave the left palm on the floor. And now start to make a movement where you slide the left hand underneath the left leg, underneath the knee. In whatever direction it goes easily with the palm on the floor. And then of course you slide it back to where it starts, the outside of the left leg. Okay, now in the starting position, You turn the left hand over so it's the back of the left hand that's on the floor, and then continue like that, sliding it under the left knee, and then sliding it back out. Okay, now just go back and forth. So once you slide it with the back of the hand on the floor, once you slide it with the palm on the floor, just find out what's different about those two things. How does the movement of sliding change, up into the shoulder and to the back, depending on the orientation of the palm? Okay, great. Now just leave that alone and roll into your back. Just rest on your back for a moment. Now, before moving on, take a few moments to compare the right side of yourself to the left side in your self-perception. Okay, now roll to one side and bring yourself back up to sitting. And again, sit with the two soles of the feet together. And again, bring the right hand onto the floor in between the two legs near the pelvis. And the left hand to the left of the left leg on the floor, outside the legs. Okay, now with the right hand and the left hand, the palms on the floor, move both hands at the same time toward the gap that's underneath the left knee. And then you bring them both back to where they start. And a few times, quietly, bring the hands toward one another like you're going to touch the fingertips together. And then you also bring them back to where they start apart. See, if you can, slide both of the palms on the floor at the same speed so they approach one another at the same rate. And then they can also separate at the same rate. Okay, good. Now turn the hands over so it's the backs of the hands that are on the floor to start. And continue sliding the hands toward one another and then apart. What difference does that make in your back to have the palms oriented this way? Good, and then you know what you could do? You could actually, once the hands get close enough to one another, you could interlace the fingers kind of underneath the left knee. And now leave the fingers interlaced. And the backs of the hands are just resting on the floor. Now there's a movement you can do. I'll describe it first, then you can do it. Where you can lean back so the back goes a little bit back. And because the fingers are interlaced, you could use the two hands to pull the knee just a little bit away from the floor, kind of in the direction of the head. And then you could let the knee go back down, let the hands return to the floor. So now just try this movement where you bring the knee closer to the head by kind of leaning backwards. And the arms stay passive, but because the fingers are interlaced, they catch the knee and bring it toward you. And if you go very softly, quietly, then you can feel how the back, many places where it could round a little bit more. And how it all connects to the left leg, the left side of the pelvis. Okay, now again, leave it alone and roll onto your back to rest. Okay, now roll onto the other side. And use both of your arms to bring you up to sitting. And again, you can sit with the two soles of the feet together. But this time, put the left hand on the floor in between the legs in front of the pelvis. And the right hand to the right of the right thigh on the outside of the legs. And now a few times to start with the left hand, just simply turn it over so the back of the left hand goes to the floor. And then return it so that the palm comes to the floor. And back and forth quietly. Without any power, so you have space to listen. And now leave the left palm on the floor and simply slide the left palm in the direction of the gap underneath the right knee. And then back to where the palm starts. And just the number of times where it stays quiet and interesting to you. You could slide it into the gap and out of the gap. Okay, now turn it over so the back of the hand is on the floor. And continue sliding the hand underneath the gap at the right knee and then back out. What could you say are the differences between doing it like this with the back of the hand on the floor and doing it the other way with the palm on the floor? where do you feel the difference in the shoulder, the back, or the neck? You could go back and forth just to compare. Try it once with the back of the hand on the floor, then once with the palm on the floor. Just see. Okay, now bring the left hand back to where it starts. And you could have the left palm on the floor, left back of the hand on the floor, either way. But now change your attention over to the right hand and simply start to turn it over so the back of the hand touches, and then return it so the palm touches. And you just go back and forth with a certain timing and space. Okay, now leave the palm on the floor, the right palm, and start to slide the palm on the floor into and out of the gap underneath the right knee. And you could remember the breathing, you forget the breathing. Okay, now turn the palm over so it's the back of the hand that's on the floor, and listening for a difference. Just continue like that with the palm facing up. And now, just to convince yourself that there is a difference, you can alternate, sliding the right hand under the gap with the palm either up or the palm down. Go back and forth. Okay, now just rest for a moment. Sit in whatever position is comfortable. And then once again, you have the soles of the feet together. The left hand on the floor to the left of your right leg. The right hand on the floor to the right of your right leg. And now, with the two palms on the floor, start to do a movement where you simultaneously slide the right hand and the left hand toward one another, underneath the right knee, and then away from one another, back to where they start. And if you can, you synchronize it so that they slide together at the same time, same rate. And they also slide apart in unison. Okay, now turn the hands over so the backs of the hands start on the floor. And expecting some difference now, start to slide the hands toward one another and then apart. Okay, now next time the fingertips are close to one another, go far enough so that you could interlace the fingers underneath behind the right knee. And now, leaving the arms relatively passive, you'll sit back in a way that pulls the right knee toward you, toward your head, toward your chest. And then you let everything return to where you start. So you could do this movement a few times, bringing the knee closer to you with the interlaced fingers. And the point is to be opposite of powerful with the arms. So arms are just passive. And you're moving the back backward and rounding it so that the fingers bring the knee. Okay, that's fine. Leave it alone. And again, roll onto your back to rest. What do you notice this time on your back? Same things as last time or different? I mean, the same types of things, different types of things, or same sensations, different sensations? Okay, now one more time, roll to one side so you can bring yourself up to sitting. And now sit with the soles of the feet together and put your right hand to the outside of your right leg, left hand to the outside of your left leg, both hands on the floor. And starting with the palms on the floor, slide both of your hands underneath the knees toward the midline. And then, of course, you can separate them, bring them back to where they start. And you do it a few times. Now, when you're sliding them together, if you go far enough, there's a moment where the forearms come in contact with the legs, with the thighs or the knees. What happens to the legs in that moment? I mean, do the knees come away from the floor, stay bent but come up? Or do the legs straighten? There's no right answer. Just feel what happens for you if you're going to bring the hands closer and closer together underneath the knees. And what happens in the back? Okay, now come back to the starting position. And turn the hands over so the backs of the hands start on the floor. And again, slide the hands towards one another, underneath, behind the legs, and then apart. And again, the feeling in the knees should be whatever is the easiest to do with the legs and the lower back. Okay, now bring the hands close enough so you could interlace the fingers. And then just take a few breaths in this position. You just feel. The inhalations, the exhalations, the roundness in the back. And then with the hands interlaced, turn them over so that the palms come toward the floor. And then return them so that the backs of the hands toward the floor. A few times go back and forth to feel what happens in the back. Feel what happens across the shoulders and the neck. Very good. Now delace the fingers and roll yourself on your back one more time and just rest. And feel the lengths of the two legs, the heels on the floor, the pelvis resting, the shape of the lower back. The breathing in the abdomen and the chest. The upper back, the shoulders. Feel the neck and the head at the end of the neck. Good, and then roll to one side, come up to sitting, and then bring yourself up to standing. And now in standing, you feel the heels on the floor and the feet on the floor. How is the weight distributed front to back of the feet? And what's the breathing like now standing? And the shape of the lower back, shape of the upper back and the shoulders, the arms hanging, the head carried at the top of the neck. Okay, now take some steps to just feel what it's like to move naturally now. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Feldencast. If you'd like to reach out and say hello, please do. You can email me at ethan@feldencast.com. I offer the Feldencast in a spirit of transparent generosity. If you have enjoyed your experience, and if you want to give back, please check out the Patreon page. It's patreon.com/Feldencast. Right now, this podcast is just a baby. We have on average 10, 12 listeners per episode. So if you'd like to help the Feldencast grow, please share this episode or any other episode that you've enjoyed, especially with family and friends. Thanks again for listening. I'm really enjoying this project, and I hope you are too.